Hi, my presentation's thesis asserts that there was a clear link between the Great Awakening preachers' messages during the 1730s and 40s and support for the American Revolution. And although the messages were primarily indirect, they reinforced the liberty and independence spirit present in America since 1630 and helped justify the resistance movements in the American colonies from 1763 through the Revolutionary War. Patricia Bonomi, in her Under the Cope of Heaven: Religion, Society, and Politics in Colonial America, has concluded that the colonial spiritual life was far more vital and more influential than the popular view that faith had ebbed and only briefly revived with the Great Awakening. Bonomi asserts that during the Great Awakening, the revivalists increasingly characterized the authority against which they were rebelling as illegitimate, even tyrannical. As a result, colonial leaders in the 1760s and 70s were able to appropriate the arguments of the revivalist preachers to support their actions in resisting British authority. James Byrd, in his Sacred Scripture, Sacred War, documents that 6 of the 20 most popular war sermons from 1675 to 1800 referred directly to King David. The preacher's messages helped the colonists associate themselves with underdog David as small but trusting in God against a British Goliath. Jonathan Edwards' 1755 sermon, for example, is one such example, which applauds David's trusting in God. In addition, Byrd cites preachers using the New Testament in political war sermons. Byrd states that patriots read these passages through the prism of Republican ideology, arguing that obedience was due only to just rulers who fostered liberty, not to evil tyrants. Preachers also used Paul's Galatians 5:1 on liberty as a patriotic slogan. Preachers found in Peter and Paul a rationale for political revolution and obedience to divine authority and an argument for Christianity as the essence of American patriotism. Alan Hemert, in his Religion and the American Mind: From the Great Awakening to the Revolution, asserts that Jonathan Edwards provided pre-revolutionary Americans with a radical, even democratic, social and political ideology, and evangelical religion embodied and inspired a thrust toward American nationalism. Hamert adds that while Jonathan Edwards generally focused his sermons on biblical sins, in 1741 he reported that politicians and citizens of New England ceased their usual bickering and contentions, and whole communities enjoyed a union and social harmony greater than that had been known in the previous 30 years. This union that came about was, quote, an American declaration of independence from Europe and an instrument of a fervent American nationalism. Jonathan Wingate Thornton, in his work The Pulpit of the American Revolution, contends that the election sermons were where pulpit and politics were regularly connected. Thornton states that John Quincy Adams later noticed that the American Revolution connected in one indissoluble bond the principles of civil government with the principles of Christianity. Thornton concludes with, quote, to the pulpit, the Puritan pulpit, we owe the moral force which won our independence. George Whitefield's preaching provides more examples of the unifying effect of awakening preaching. Whitefield, in The Almost Christian, concludes, why should we be so in love with slavery? Later listeners connected slavery in his sermon to the slavery of being subject to a king, for which there is no representation for the colonies. Another of Whitefield's wartime sermons was British Mercies and British Duties, given in Philadelphia in 1746. In a sermon, Whitefield praises God for his deliverance in battle, while making allusions to the plots first hatched in hell and afterwards nursed in Rome. which stirred up fears of Catholicism and Roman influence, especially after the Quebec Act of 1774. Whitfield's sermon reminds his listeners that the liberties are threatened, which, like Jonathan Edwards' sermon, helped increase the colonists' sense of union and social harmony. Michael LaFaro noted that the success of his itinerant ministry in the colonies indirectly hastened the break with England by increasing the number of dissenters and perceptibly encouraged American independence. In conclusion, while the Great Awakening provided few explicit messages promoting the Revolution, its messages reinforced the liberty and independence spirit present in 1630. Patriots concluded that the revivalist preachers were sympathetic to the revolutionary cause and justified the resistance movement in the American colonies from 1763 through the Revolutionary War. Thank you.